name is Pastor Scott, and I'm so excited to have you with us here. It's just been a great thing that some of the youth have requested that we start recording our Wednesday night sermons, and so that they can catch up on them and review them, and if they weren't here, be able to come back and watch them. And it just blesses my heart so much that we have a group of young people who are so eager to hear the Word of God. And so I pray that you use this resource in conjunction to being connected and being a part of your local church. And I just pray that the Lord uses this message and blesses you through it. And so please enjoy. Welcome if you're online, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, we want to say welcome, and I pray that the Lord speaks to you through this message. But we are in our World View of Truth series. If you haven't been with us before, or you don't just haven't been here in the last couple of weeks that we've been doing this, our World View of Truth, the series is designed to look into things that the world are saying that are true. They're presenting many things to especially a young generation such as yourselves, and they are entitling these things true. And we are diving into God's Word to see if, in fact, these things are true. And we discussed many different things over the last couple of weeks. We had our sex series last week that talked about a lot of the lies and things that the enemy presents as truth to you guys that aren't. And so we talked about that. And this sermon is entitled After the Rose. Now, any of my reality TV fans out there have probably heard or seen of the show called The Bachelor. And so what this show is it is a reality show where they gather a bunch of girls and one bachelor who's a single man, and he it's a TV show designed around them dating and him trying to find his true love. And so every week he gives a rose. They give him a number of roses to give out. And of course, the number of roses is less than the women that are out there. So he has to eliminate people. And it goes on and on and on until there's two girls left. And then he gives one rose away. And usually, I don't know how, I haven't seen this in many, many years, but usually he asks the last person to marry him. And so the reason we entitled After the Rose for tonight is because tonight we're going to be diving into marriage. This is, now, many of you, I just lost you, and so please make sure you're paying attention tonight, because you say to me, Pastor Scott, I'm 15, I'm 13, I'm 12, I'm 16, I'm not getting married anytime soon. Congratulations, you're darn right you're not. But guess what? You will one day. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight is going to, one, aid you in the future when you are married. I believe that the Lord can bring things back to your memory. Two, it is going to help you now. How will it help you now? We're going to talk about a lot of character traits for godly men and women in the way marriage is meant to be used. And so guess who should possess these qualities? The people you're dating. Because why are you dating somebody that you don't think is going to be your husband one day or your wife one day? You're using dating incorrectly then. And so we're going to talk about that. So please be paying attention because this helps you right here and right now. Now I'm already ahead of myself. So when you grow up, as you grow, you start paying attention. They call this maturing. And so you are, whether you know it or not, and you are, I don't care if you know it or not, you are being shaped. Now, there's many things that come into play when you're being shaped, and I'm talking spiritually, I'm talking mentally, I'm talking your beliefs, political, whether you think the earth is flat, whatever it is. All your ideas and opinions have to come from somewhere. And so it usually comes from your family, because they're the ones you're around the most. It comes from your friends, because again, they're the ones that you are letting pour into your life. I said it a million times, and I'll say it a million more. Show me your 5 closest friends, and I'll show you where you'll be in 5 years. And so these are things that are taking a toll on you, one of which is the things that you don't know are shaping you. And those are the scary ones. And what I mean by this is we talked about the entertainment. So for me, growing up in the 90s, Disney turned out all these very popular movies that kids were getting hooked on and watching a billion times in a row, and they were called fairy tales. And so fairy tales go way back, way before my time, but fairy tales were super popular, princesses and princes and all these things. So growing up, I especially started watching all these because they were VHSs. Now I know that you guys don't know what that is. It was this brick that you would have to rewind, and when it broke, you would have to stick a screwdriver in there and do it by hand, and it took an hour, but it was worth it because I got to watch The Lion King for the umpteenth time. And so all of a sudden, years later, decades later, I started realizing that these movies had worn off on me. We're going to talk about it tonight. So, Walt Disney, great guy. I got no problem with Disney. But he was very uncreative in the 90s because most of the storylines were very similar. Beautiful girl, girl meets guy, girl gets into trouble, guy swoops in, saves the day, happily ever after, they live. That was more or less the tagline. If you need a couple of examples, Cinderella, Rapunzel, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Mulan, Aladdin, all these are just very few of, if you think about the storylines, they're very similar. And they all have the same theme in common. Girl meets guy, guy saves the day, they fall in love, happily ever after. No, it's not, because she ends up with him. And he comes and he saves her life, so it's not different. I made sure I went back and redid my homework on all these stories. But yes, all these have a man who saves the day. And so the issue with these movies is that they create something that I call the fairy tale syndrome. And what the fairy tale syndrome is, it's still happening today, whether you know it or not. The fairy tale syndrome is all these great Disney movies, and don't get me wrong, I got nothing against Disney. Love Disney, they're fine. But when you watch these unguarded like I did, these premises start to wear off on you. And the problem with these movies is they're a lie. Why are they a lie? Because they all have one thing in common. They stop after the engagement or the wedding. Did you ever notice that? There's no Disney movie where they talk about after the marriage, where the guy swoops in, saves the day, they fall in love, and then it says they live happily ever after. They show the wedding, credits. There's no movie that starts out with the wedding and then goes into the marriage. Why? See, I believe that when Walt Disney designed these, he understood marriage very well, and he understood that after I do is when the work starts. See, don't get me wrong, falling in love is beautiful and fantastic and thrilling and exciting, and there's adventure, and you're getting to know this person, and it sweeps you off your feet, you get caught up, it's fantastic. Trust me, I've been in love. I married my wife. And they call it the honeymoon period, is before, when we're dating, we're in like a little love bubble. And that's the romantic part of it. But after I do, she agreed to be with me forever through thick and thin, better or worse, richer or poorer. And so now we're together. And so that's when staying together begins the work. And so an example of a Disney, I thought this was pretty funny. I want to share it with you guys. An example of a comedian made a comic of Aladdin after the marriage. And I thought it was pretty funny because it says, I wish we didn't have to go to this dinner party. Oh, you wish. Well, too bad. We're all out of wishes. Let's not do this tonight. Not again. I just don't understand. When you had to set him free, you could have had wishes for unlimited genies. I don't think that's how it works. And setting him free was the right thing to do. Why can't you see that, you monster? Gee, I wish I could see that. But again, we're all out of wishes. See, this is what being married would be like. Because after that romance wears off a little bit, which every marriage will, the work begins. And so, growing up, I became a hopeless romantic, which means I love rom-coms. I love cheesy romantic movies. Nicholas Sparks has my heart. I love anything. You can just get me to watch a movie because he made it. If you don't know who that is, he's a romance writer. And the reason is I always gravitated towards these movies because of the prince. I always wanted to find a woman I could sweep off her feet and be her knight in shining armor and be that guy. And the issue, though, is that growing up, you realize that things like this tend to happen. And what happens when the movie and what you want turns out not to be real? What do you do? And so, see, the creators of these films left out part of their story. They twisted and used it and created smoke and mirrors to form a perfect relationship. Now, I got news for you. Unfortunately, there is no such thing as a perfect relationship. But does this sound familiar to you guys, updating it to the 21st century? Does it sound familiar? Is anyone doing this? If you need a little help, let me show you. Work with me. Chris, can you bring up that next photo? As Chris brings that up, I think you might have to move it to the front. It might be behind. But as Chris works on that, it's a picture. I'll explain it to you if he can't get it. It's a picture of an Instagram person who's sitting on a green screen, and then on the other side is the photo that he actually posted, and it's him in a airplane. And so it is, guys, you might have to go to edit and then bring it forward. But it's not real. It's what he wanted. All right, don't worry about it. And so what he did is he photoshopped himself into an airplane. And it's not real. But everybody who looks at the photo thinks it's real. And so we see this with the Disney movies, is the fairy tale syndrome is presenting a relationship and getting kids hooked on, this is what love looks like. This is what I want out of a person. This is what I want in marriage, but it's not real. See, my wife is not a princess, and I am not a prince. Do you understand how what I wasn't paying attention to started to wear off on me? And now I have to go back and reevaluate what is real and what is not real. So anytime you are dealing with worldly things, make sure you are guarding your heart. Because if you do not, they will wear off on you. So one of the things the world says, and you hear this a lot regarding marriage, it says that you don't have to get married. That you can live and enjoy things that were meant for marriage outside of marriage. That I no longer need to marry somebody in order to have kids with them. I no longer need to marry somebody in order to live with them. This, ladies and gentlemen, is false. I once heard a man say to his girlfriend, I don't need to go down to City Hall and pay $25 to get a certificate to prove I love you. That's not the point. He's missing the point. So, the problem with this statement is when unbelievers get married. See, I got nothing but love for unbelievers, but I have no idea why unbelievers would want to get married in the first place. That's a weird statement, Scott. What do you mean? Who created marriage? Who was the very first person to perform a marriage ceremony? It was God. God created Adam and Eve. He actually created Eve for Adam, gave her to him, and he was present when they were married. First marriage ever in the history of mankind. And God was present. It is the uniting of two people. It is the melding of souls. It is a spiritual and emotional and 100% religious experience. So if you don't believe in God, then what are we talking about? Then why do you want to get married? Because, believe it or not, in the beginning of mankind, mankind knew sex outside of marriage was wrong, knew that I can't live with somebody if we're not married, knew all these things were meant for marriage. So guess what? If I want to do these things, I have to become married. And so, where do we as believers stand on getting married? What do we have to? Do you know if you have to be married? If this is, because girls, I feel for you tremendously. The world and society and your mothers probably, no offense moms, but women, you got it rough. And I pray for my daughter all the time because you are forced, if you pass a certain age without being married, you're looked down upon. It's oh, that poor thing is 30 and she's not married. Yet a single guy can be 30 and he's goal driven and focused on his work. Good for him. Why? That irks me. That's a different thing for a different story. But if you don't know if you have to get married, we turn again to the Word of God. 1 Corinthians 7, if you want to write it down, that's where we'll be. 1 through 9 says, "Now, for the matters you wrote about," this is Paul speaking, by the way, "it is good for a man to not have sexual relations with a woman. But since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duties to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together and again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all of you were as I am, but each of you has your own gift from God. One has this gift, another has that. Now, to the unmarried and the widow, I say it is good for them to stay unmarried as I do. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion." These verses show us that we don't have to get married. There are people who are called to what is called celibacy. That is, for them never to enter into sex, never enter into marriage, and never enter into the things that marriage brings. Jesus was number one. He never had a girlfriend. He never had a wife. Paul was another one. As he's writing this, it is a gift from God. Not everybody gets that gift. But Paul warns us. He says, if you start to have these feelings, if you start to have these urges, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. You're not a bad person for feeling them. They're okay as long as you use them in the way God intended. And so he says it is better for somebody to get married than burn with passion their whole life and have that constant, because guys, I'll tell you this, if you are one of the people, and it's rarity, people who are given the gift of celibacy, not many are. And so if you are one of the many who are attracted to the opposite sex, who have those desires that burn inside of you, you are to find the one God created for you. You are to use it in the institute of marriage, and that's the way God designed it. And so my answer to you is no, you do not have to be married. If you're called to celibacy, that's great. You're going to do great things, and God's going to use you in tremendous ways. But, as he says, it is better to be married than to let this passion rule your life. Because I'm telling you now, if you have that passion, it will lead you down a dark place. It will cause you to sin. It will make you make stupid decisions if you don't take control of it. You have to take control. And so, the issue we have as humans is, with this verse, is I want what I want, and I want to do it when I want to do it, how I want to do it, and I'm going to live my life however I want. That's a problem. Because that leads you into sin. That leads you into making horrible decisions. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, so many marriages fail today. Is because first you have people entering into a religious experience without religion. You have people who don't understand who God is entering into a covenant with God. Do you see how we are setting ourselves up for failure here? And then the thing that boggles my mind is that people will spend their whole lives, believers, it burns me to the core that believers do this. They will spend their whole lives running around, dating and sleeping with whoever they want. And then one day when they finally find somebody that they want to settle down with, think they can flip a switch, and now all that's gone, it's in the past, and I'm going to stay true and married to this person forever. Do you understand what you just practiced for the last how many years? You practice breaking up, and you practice leaving the person you're marrying. You know why I never had sex before I got married? Is because I didn't want to do that to my wife. Did I know her name? No. But did I used to pray for her? Yes. Because I knew God knew her name. And anytime I was tempted, and there were plenty of times I had opportunities, and I was put very close to the fire, and I felt the Lord really weighing on my heart. Do you want to do this, Scott? Are you going to step out of my will? Are you going to come against me? And I had to, in that moment, think of her. Because was I going to misuse it? Was I going to let that burning passion out of its cage? And I said, no, I don't want to go against the will of God. And it wasn't easy. I'm not saying it's easy. Why do you think so many, it's a joke that me and Joe have, why do you think so many Christian couples get married so young? It's because they don't want to wait to have sex. They don't want to wait to let this burn for 28 years like I did. It's not easy, especially when you go to college and all these things that start getting thrown at you in your older years. But I'm telling you now, marriage, if you want a healthy marriage, you got to start listening to these verses and rules now. You cannot take God out of marriage. It can't be done. Another lie that the world tries to pass off as truth is, this one really breaks my heart, is I can take it or leave it. If they don't like me, there's always divorce. Guys. If you are entering into marriage with the idea that there's always divorce, you're doomed from the start. I looked at my wife when after we did the romantic engagement, and she said yes, and I was down on one knee, and there's rose petals everywhere. I did it up big, guys, because again, I'm a hopeless romantic. After we cried and we loved each other, and she said I do. When all the hoopla settled down that night, I came to her and I said, hey, now, real talk, look at me. if we go through with this, I need you to take the time till the wedding day to think. I said, if you say yes, and I say yes, and we get married before God, you are understanding that the only way out is death. That I don't care what the world throws at us. I don't care what you do. The only way I leave you is if I die. Do you understand that? And she started crying, and she looked at me and she said, same thing goes for me. Because we understood there's no way out. That when I enter into this, this is forever. This is for life. Because that's the way marriage was meant to be. There is no second chance. If you don't believe me that the world says things like this, to quote The Office, if you know who Stanley Hudson is, he says, it's like I used to tell my wife, I do not apologize unless I think I'm wrong, and if you don't like it, you can leave. And I'll say the same thing to my current wife, and I'll say it to the next one too. Stanley, that's not how you treat your wife. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the worldview. Nobody raised an eyebrow when he said this. I had to create that picture. Because nobody thought that was wrong. Because if you don't want to, if Josh messes up, there's always divorce for Josh. There's always divorce for Stanley. In the show, he's married like 6 times. And he's constantly cheating on all the women. This is not okay. This is not true. There is no divorce. There is no way out. That's why marriage should be taken very, very seriously. When me and my wife entered into marriage, we had every serious discussion. We're weird. We had most of them our first date. It was really, yeah, I know. We had very major talks the very first night. We're odd. But you have to have these conversations before you get married. This is not the way to treat your spouse. If you go to Ephesians 5, it talks about how we're supposed to treat each other. So that's my question. If that's not how you're supposed to treat your wife or your husband, what is? You guys do understand that every answer to these questions is found right here in this book. In Ephesians 5, it talks about, it's very simple. Men, love your wives. Respect them. Treat them as your own body. The Bible says that a man would not harm himself, that I take care of my body. In that way, I'm supposed to think of my wife as an extension of myself. I'm supposed to provide for her, protect her, love her, be there for her. Women, very simple. Respect your husbands. Love them. Be with them. Care for them. Pray for them. Strengthen them. Be there for them. In love, it encompasses everything. This is not love. There's so many times where I feel like the odd man out because I'm sitting around, we're out at a club playing darts, and all these old guys and some of the younger guys around me are going off about their wives and all the ball and chain, and they're so disrespectful. They're saying horrible things about the person you're supposed to be loving. And I got called out the one time, Scott, how comes you never complain about your old lady? Because I love her. Yeah, but don't get me wrong. There is no such thing as a perfect marriage. Are there times that I want to light my wife on fire? Absolutely, but I don't. Why? Because it's wrong and illegal. And I would get caught. And I would not do well in prison. I'm telling you now. Are there times where I get frustrated with her, where she can push buttons that nobody else can that will irritate and irk me to no end? Absolutely. But I encourage you to find a person in your life that you don't have friction with, that you don't have problems with, that you've never fought with, that you've never had one argument with. My guesses are you can't. Raise your hand if you've never fought with your parents. Yeah, that one. Your mom's here. I can ask her. That was stupid. You're like the only other person in here that cannot, you have somebody here to yell at you. You can't. Why? Every relationship is different. Every relationship in here is different. Some are built on God even. But why is there friction? What's the one thing we all have in common? It's with people. And what do we learn? People are not perfect. See, one of the lies that Disney built that I didn't even know was a problem in my life until the Lord showed me was that I was building my wife into an idol. I didn't even know it. I didn't even know her name. But you know what? I used to pray to God at night when I was 22 and in my house that I bought, and I would sit there and I'd pray, Lord, give me this woman that I can pour out all my love on and spoil and treat her so good, and she's going to be my everything. She's going to be my world, and I'm going to love her with all my heart. Do you understand how much that broke God's heart? Because one of the things he knew is that she is just a person. And if I put all of my hopes and dreams and reliability on her, she will fail me. I'm your pastor, guys. I fail my wife all the time. There are times I am too quick to be angry. There are times that I withhold forgiveness. There are times I constantly am reminding her, don't put your hopes and dreams on me, because I will let you down. I'm only human. I'm a broken man. Don't treat me like you're Prince Charming. I'm not your savior. Do you understand where that needs to go? See, the Lord showed me that I need to let him be my everything. It wasn't until I finally realized this and I said, oh my gosh, God, I get it. You're everything. That should I never marry, you're enough. That you will sustain me. My joy that I get from relationship with you will be enough to surpass anything that a woman could give me. The minute I realized that, the very next week, I met my wife. I had to learn that lesson. God was not going to, she lived 2 minutes from me. And we never met. I believe with every fiber of my being that the Lord kept us from each other until I learned that lesson. Because if he would have given her to me early, I would have made her into an idol. I would have put her on God's seat in my life. And my life would have crumbled because she's merely human. Are you desiring a husband? Are you desiring a wife so much that you are missing the things that God is doing in your life? When marriage is done properly, I don't get a person that I can put all my hopes and dreams on. I get somebody who is going to push me towards the person I can put my hopes and dreams on. Greatest thing I love about my wife is she pushes me closer to God every single day. That woman refuses to let me go against God's will. And I love every minute of it. Because she makes me better. She gets angry with me sometimes because I won't let her stay in her bad mood. I irk her to the point where she gets out of it. Because I know that's not where God has placed her. We push each other constantly towards God, whether the other wants it or not. That is a marriage. And again, We don't have a perfect one, but I'm going to use my marriage as an example. Girls, you're often told that your value comes from the desire of men. It's not right. Guys are often told that the desire of women is where your value is found. Some of the teens in here are finding that it's their peers' opinions of themselves, the likes on Facebook that give you meaning, that the love you share will be enough to get you through anything. You're told that one day you will find somebody who can be your everything. All of those are lies. Only Jesus Christ can sustain you. Only Him can show you who you're meant to be and what your value is. If you are struggling with identity in yourself, if you are struggling with am I worth anything? If you are struggling with these lies that the world is telling you, oh, well, if you get enough money in your bank account, you'll be happy. If you get enough likes on Instagram, you'll be happy. If you get enough followers, if you get that boy at school who's the quarterback and the popular kid, then you'll be looked at with value. They're lies from the pit of hell. It may not look like it, but when I was a kid, I was, how do I say this correctly? I was promiscuous. I was an idiot. We'll put it that way. I was stupid and shallow, and I dated as a sport. I wanted to date the pretty girls and to see if I could. It was a game to me, and it was incorrect use of dating, and I regret it, but I know exactly what it's like to date somebody for selfish reasons to try and get something out of them. And it's not right. Because guess what? I got the pretty girl. I got the most popular girl. She was my girlfriend. And every guy looked at me like he wanted to be me. And all of a sudden, all these girls wanted to be with me because I was with her. And I was still unhappy. I still wasn't fulfilled. Why? Because the world cannot deliver on the promises they make. When they say, I got what you need to be happy, they hold it just back here enough where you will never obtain it. And those who actually can dive into such depression and such unhappiness because they're like, I finally got it. Why am I unhappy now? Why am I not satisfied? Some of the richest people in the world are some of the saddest. Because things of this world cannot sustain you. Only God can. See, real marriages need God. Without God, your marriage is doomed. So what are some things to help you out now while you're single? Ladies and gentlemen, write this on your notebook, highlight it, stick it in your mirror to remember. Date someone for who they are, not who they could be. Date someone for who they are, not who they could be. Now, not to pick on the girls in here, but ladies, this is mostly for you. See, men and women typically, not blanket statement, typically, men and women have two gears when it comes to dating. Men, like I said, I did it first, are for status and prestige, and it's usually for other guys. It's weird because I want to date somebody that everybody else wants, and now I win. So it's a competition thing. It's a masculine thing. It's wrong. Girls, I don't know why. I will ask God this when I get up there, but a lot of women want to be the one to change a man. I've heard many, many women, and I was the bad boy when I was a young kid, and I used it to my advantage in dating. I heard many women say, he's not bad, he just needs the right woman. That is a lie. That man needs Jesus. That's the only one who can change a person. I don't care how, you could be Mother Teresa. You're not going to change a bad boy if he doesn't want to change. Guess what you're going to get? You're going to get a husband now that is just bad as he was the day you met him, and now you're frustrated because you're stuck with him and he refuses to change. Do you understand how messed up that is? And how so many people today enter into marriage thinking, oh, they'll grow up. Oh, they'll get better. Oh, they'll become a good father. They'll become a good husband. They'll become a good boyfriend. They'll start to treat me right if we can just get past the wedding. They won't. What you marry is what you get. You have to enter into that mindset. Now, can God do anything? Can he redeem people who are lost? Can he change a man's heart even though he spent 20 years abusing his wife? Of course. God can do anything. I'm not pigeonholing God, but what I'm telling you is date someone now for who they are, not who you think they're going to be. Because when you roll the dice with that, you're gambling that person's going to turn out to be who you want. But what if they're not? Now you're unhappy. Now you would have never entered into this marriage. Do you understand the problem with this thinking? The fairy tale syndrome makes young people believe there is such thing as a marriage, as a perfect marriage. And there is no such thing. See, people are not perfect, guys. When you look at marriage this way, you can really understand the need for God. Now, I want to give you something to help recall this to memory when you're my age. I want you to think of marriage, and it's a weird analogy, but I want you to think of marriage as a hospital. It's weird, right? Why would marriage be like a hospital? Well, a hospital can be a good place. It can be where you go for healing. It can be where happiness is found. But a hospital can also be a very serious place where bad things happen and pain and heartache are felt. Marriage is much the same way, where there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. But what does every hospital have in common? That by law, every hospital, when it's built, is required to have a backup generator. Why? Because, stay with me, because if the power for that hospital fails, everybody would die. So they need a backup power source so that when the power fails, it kicks on and can keep things running until the issue can be resolved. The reason your marriage is like a hospital is because I will fail my wife. That our marriage will not survive on my power alone. And when I fail my wife, God is my backup generator. He steps into our marriage and says, Scott, you need to love her. Do you have any idea how many times I get so angry with God because my wife did something stupid? Now I'm angry, and I leave the house angry, and I want to be angry, and I don't want to forgive her. And he steps in and says, you're called to forgive her, love her. And I say, no, God, not going to do it. And he said, Scott, remember the love I have for you? And I said, yes, Lord, you love me. He said, you remember that forgiveness I gave you? And I said, yes, Lord, you forgave me when you didn't have to. And I accept that forgiveness, and I love it. And he says, now show it to her. And I said, I don't want to. And he says, but son, I'm calling you to. Do you understand where my power failed? God's power kept us afloat. There are times where I mess up and I hurt her. And I want to run away and bury my head in the sand. And God says, go to her and ask for forgiveness. And I say, God, I don't want to. And he said, did Did you ask me for forgiveness, and did I forgive you? And I said, yes. And he says, now go do it to her. And I said, God, I don't want to. He says, but I'm calling you to. Where my pride caused me to fail in my marriage, God stepped in. Do you understand why you cannot take God out of marriage? This is why marriages are failing today, is because we're removing God and the Bible from this equation. You can't have a healthy marriage without God. You will fail your husband, you will fail your wife, I guarantee it. You have to have that backup generator so that when I do fail, he kicks on and comes in and helps us, keeps us running until we can reconcile the situation. I hope that sticks with you, because you need to understand that a marriage is not easy. I wish it was, guys. I wish that everybody could stay married forever. But if you look at the statistics, they're shocking. I mean, most of you guys know over half of marriages fail. 65% of second marriages fail, and when you get to the third marriage, 75% fail. Because you're learning how to fail. You're learning how to create problems. Like Stanley, you're refusing to be biblically sound in the way I treat, respect, love, forgive, and humble myself before my spouse. When you enter into marriage willy-nilly, you are setting yourself up for failure. You have to have real conversations with your spouse. One of the things a pastor said to me that was amazing and just eye-opening and ended up being the thing that God used to get me to my wife was he sat me down and I was complaining to him, and he was a friend of mine, and I was complaining to him, and I said, I'm just so sick and tired of being single. And he said, really? And he said, what's going on? I said, I just wish I had my wife. I want to be married. I want to be a father. I want all these things, but God keeps saying no. And he said, so Scott, let me ask you this. He said, what kind of woman do you want? And I said, I want a godly woman. I want a woman who loves God, who is walking in his will, and and I listed all these things, and he said, okay, perfect. He said, that's great, you know what you want. He said, now where are you searching for? Where do you spend all your time? I said, well, at the bar. And he said, you meet many godly people at the bar? And I was like, he said, you could go to Blue Marsh Lake and fish for a great white shark. You could sit there all day with your rod in the water and sit there for years on end. You could catch one. Somebody could put a shark in there one day. He said, it's possible, but is it likely? Or would you have better chance going out into the ocean? And what he was trying to get me to understand, and what I'm telling you, is if you're having trouble finding a person that you want, look at the fishing hole you're fishing in. Because guess where godly people are? In the house of God with their hands raised. Do you know how many great marriages? I ask them where they met, and they say youth group. Joe and Elise Gagne, love them. They met in youth group. So many people. Guess where I met my wife? To be a pastor. When we went to school to be pastors. That's where I met my wife, in a Christian place, getting closer to God. If you want that type of person, go where they go. Be where they are. And what God was trying to get me to understand in that moment is, if you want a godly woman, get closer to God and you'll find her. The closer I chased to God, the more he revealed to me in what a relationship looks like. Fairy tales are fake. They're not real. There is no Prince Charming. No one's coming in here on a white horse to sweep you off your feet. You cannot save a woman. You cannot be her everything. I'm telling you now. I wish somebody told me this at your age. It's not real. Throw that out. It's a lie that you think you're going to find a man who's perfect. None of us are. There was only one, and he didn't date. You will never find a woman that you love everything about. You will never find somebody that you can put all your hopes and dreams into. That is a recipe for failure. The one that you can put all your hopes and dreams on is Jesus. And the closer you get to him, the closer you get to finding your significant other, I promise you. Because God has a plan for your life. He has a will for you. I believe with every fiber of my being, and I joke with my wife constantly, and she hates it because she has ticklish ribs, and I constantly am poking her in the ribs, saying, that one's mine. I want it back. And it leads to me grabbing her by the ribs and tickling her, because the joke is, just as he took a rib from Adam and made Eve, I said he took mine and made you. But I believe it with every fiber of my being that when she was shaped by God's hands, that he shaped her with the idea of me, because she's my wife. We are one before the Lord. Keep that in mind, guys, that the things you do now affect the person you're gonna marry. I encourage you all tonight. Go home when you say your prayers tonight. Pray for your husbands. Pray for your wives. They might need it at this moment. I know you don't know their name, but God does. Pray for your children. Pray for your grandchildren. I'm already praying for Belle's kids and her kids, because God doesn't operate on a timeline. He operates outside of time. He hears your prayers now that can affect the generations. Devote your heart to God, and everything else will fall into place. Love